When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. They're the home of the #1 checkout on the planet and the not-so-secret Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales happening. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds and Skims use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/start selling, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/start selling to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/start selling.
Work management platforms. Ugh, endless onboarding, IT bottlenecks, admin requests. But what if things were different?
We found love in an open space.
Monday.com is different. No lengthy onboarding. Beautiful reports in minutes. Custom workflows you can build on your own. Easy to use prompt-free AI. Turns out you can love a work management platform. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
Welcome back to another episode of Investies. I'm your host, Linda Garcia. This week on the podcast, we are going to discuss new data that was just released from the Bureau of Labor Statistics pertaining to employment numbers for the month of February. We also heard from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell last Friday. We're going to discuss some of his remarks, as well as how the market reacted to the way Jerome Powell is perceiving economic changes under Trump's administration. But before we get into that, let's recap how the market did last week. By now, we should all have come to the conclusion that this market under Trump's administration is going to be extremely volatile because of all of the moves that he is making that will impact the economy. Last week, the catalyst to all of the volatility was on tariffs. On Tuesday, Trump announced that he was enacting tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and we saw the immediate reaction from the market as it began to crumble. We saw the NASDAQ come close to correction territory. We then watched Trump walk it back later in the week and granted temporary tariff exemptions for Canadian and Mexican goods covered by the North American Trade Agreement known as USMCA until April 2nd. In this trade agreement, we have about 50% of Mexican imports and 38% of Canadian imports that are protected. This is according to a White House official. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum said that Mexico should be spared when such reciprocal tariffs come into effect. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said his goal remains to get all tariffs removed. It looks and sounds to me like we keep kicking this can down the road. At first, he was coming in strong, going to enact tariffs, and then a few days after that, he said, we're going to implement a 30-day extension. Then we reach the 30-day extension, and he comes in and says, we're going to enact tariffs, and then now he walks it back. It's not taking place until April 2nd. I'm not sure if his plan to enact tariffs is necessarily unfolding in our favor. It's causing more uncertainty in the market, a lot of volatility, but also the fact that he keeps walking things back, and both the Prime Minister and the President of Mexico seem to be not fearful and ready and willing to come in with their own plan of attack tells me that If we do enact these tariffs, we could most definitely go into a trade war. While Trump says he's prepared for a trade war, the fact that we keep kicking the can down the road makes me feel like maybe he's not as ready for a trade war as he thinks he is. The reason we saw an extension to begin with until April 2nd is because a conversation he had with the president of Mexico on Truth Social, he posted, "After speaking with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico, I have agreed that Mexico will not be required to pay tariffs on anything that falls under the USMCA agreement. This agreement is until April 2nd. Trump said that he agreed to this exemption out of respect for Mexico's president. It's very clear here that Mexico's president is not backing down and is making some sort of headway in the negotiations. Here is how the top 3 indexes reacted to all of this news that was unfolding last week. The Dow was down 2.7% for the week. The S&P 500 was down 3.5% for the week. The Nasdaq was down 4.02% for the week. For those that are new to learning about the stock market, those numbers may sound minimal, but they're actually relatively steep numbers. Given that on average, the S&P 500 gains anywhere from 5 to 8% a year. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you can really see the impact that this news has had on the market. Now I want to take a look at how the indexes have performed from their all-time highs. The Dow is down 4.9% from its all-time high. The S&P 500 is down 6.09% from its all-time high, and the Nasdaq is down 9.8% from its all-time high. Now, the Nasdaq is the one that continues to get really close to correction territory. It'll start to make up its losses and then inch down closer to correction territory. So it has kind of been moving back and forth. Now, just as a reminder, correction territory is when an index or an individual stock has dropped by 10%. Anything more than a 20% drop is a index or a stock crashing. So correction, honestly, is relatively pretty healthy. You can take it exactly how it sounds. The market is correcting itself. We have seen a massive increase in technology since the start of the year, and perhaps earlier since we knew that Donald Trump would step into office. And so I do think that the NASDAQ taking back some of these gains is pretty healthy. Now, when you look at individual stocks, the drop is much more steep. So we have for sure had some technology companies that have entered correction territory.
From ADT comes Trusted Neighbor, the new standard in home access. Through the ADT Plus app, easily grant and automate event-based or scheduled access for neighbors, friends, and helpers. Notify trusted individuals of events like alarms or packages, and set access windows for planned guests or even the dog walker without interrupting your day. Visit ADT.com. When every second counts, count on ADT. Requires ADT Complete Pro monitoring plan and compatible devices. Copyright 2025 ADT LLC. All rights reserved.
Hi there, it's your vagina speaking. I know sometimes I have a hard time getting there when we get down, but OMG Cream from Wisp is here to help. The instant arousal makes it easier to, shh. It takes 2 minutes to order online, so let's give it a try. OMG. I literally just went to heaven. I'm gonna try that again. Go tell your friends though, get on Wisp. Order OMG Cream online at hellowisp.com. That's hello, WISP.com, and have it delivered for free. Use code OMG for 15% off your first order.
Last week on Friday, we received the Bureau of Labor Statistics report. This is a report that lets us know how job growth is doing in the United States. Here's what we need to know pertaining to that job report. Jobs in the month of February increased by 151,000. This was better than what took place in the month of January. For January, we had an increase of 125,000. So we see some positive news there where job growth did increase. Let's take a look at what sectors benefited the most from job creation. So healthcare did lead the way, adding 52,000 jobs. That is pretty much in line with a 12-month average. Other sectors that also benefited were financial activities, coming in at 21,000 in job creation. Transportation and warehousing came in at 18,000 in job creation. Social assistance grew by 11,000, and retail posted a decline of 6,000 workers. That leads me into our next topic, that despite all of this job creation, the unemployment rate moved up by 4.1%. That 4.1%, while I know it sounds minimal, it is equivalent to 7.1 million people filing for unemployment. I think it's also worth noting that in the data under unemployment rates, when we look at the breakdown of each ethnicity, the most impacted was the Latino ethnicity. It was a pretty significant impact. And given everything that is going on across the country, this is something that I'm definitely going to be watching closely in next month's BLS report. I also want to highlight that the firing that has taken place from DOJ is not yet reflected in the BLS report. The firings took place after the deadline for the February report, so we will not have an update until the March BLS report that is set to come out in May. However, according to an outplacement firm called Challenger, Gray and Christmas, we have had so far more than 62,000 layoffs. So we definitely expect for these layoffs to impact next month's report. The BLS report was released last Friday morning, and immediately as soon as the data was released and being processed, we saw at market open a very significant decline in the market. And you might be asking yourself, why did the market have such a negative reaction if we had a much more positive number than the month prior? That's because analysts always give a target number that they believe we should be reaching. And the anticipated number was significantly lower than the one that we actually reached. So it didn't matter that we performed better than the month prior. We did not perform at the rate that analysts were expecting. And so the market had a very negative reaction. Now, in the midst of this, we then have Fed Chair Powell publicly speaking on a U.S. monetary policy forum, and immediately we begin to see the market reverse itself. Had Fed Chair Powell not spoken on this forum, we most definitely would have seen the NASDAQ in correction territory, and we would have seen steep drops for the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones. But Fed Chair Powell saved the day. We actually closed on a positive note for Friday because of Fed Chair Powell's perspective. Now, while he's not necessarily saying that everything is great, he is saying that we are in a great position where our interest rates are at overall. So this is what Fed Chair Powell said. Some of the remarks were, the White House is in the process of implementing significant policy changes in 4 distinct areas: trade, immigration, fiscal policy, and regulations. He went on to say it is the net effect of these policy changes that will matter for the economy and for the path of monetary policy. Nothing that uncertainty around the changes and their likely effects remains high, focused on separating the signal from the noise as the outlook evolves. We do not need to be in a hurry and are well positioned to wait for greater clarity. That is what the market responded to. That last sentence there. We do not need to be in a hurry and are well positioned to wait for greater clarity. Now, the market saw that as a positive. He went on to say, policy is not on a preset course. Our current policy stance is well positioned to deal with the risks and uncertainties that we face in pursuing both sides of our dual mandate. Now, normally the market would have a very negative reaction at the idea that we will be pausing rates, we will be standing still, because the market was anticipating an increase. So typically, if Fed Chair Powell doesn't give us an increase in rates, the market gets relatively angry, and we were expecting for a rate cut in June, a second rate cut in July, and a third rate cut in September. I don't agree with any of those rate cuts. My stance is still the same. You all know how I feel. Inflation isn't lower. Therefore, I don't believe we should be making any rate cuts. Well, Fed Chair Powell seemed to signal that we will be pausing until we have more clarity in the market. So he really established a sense of positivity, a sense of the United States being in a good place and being able to withstand the volatility and the uncertainty. As soon as Fed Chair Powell began to signal this, the market went into reversal mode. It liked what it heard. I think it just needed some positivity and assurance that everything was going to be okay. You all know what to do when the market is down. This is a time to stay consistent, continue investing into the market, continue to build your portfolio. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Investies. You are listening to a Cosmic Standard and In Luz We Trust production. A special thank you to the team, Asia Simpson, Eliza Smith, and Jacob Winnick.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
Oh, 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 O'Reilly Auto Parts.